Welcome, and today we explore the sophisticated ontological and epistemological framework of Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr. Based on our previous discussion where we saw how Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr defined al-jism, or the body, as a constellation of aʿrāḍ, or the accident, we now examine his nuanced engagement with Aristotelian categories, his reinterpretation of the corporeal existence, and his bold rejection of metaphysical concepts like prime matter and passive potentiality. So join us as we explore how Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr is situated between the Muʿtazila rationalism and Jahmi determinism, and how he redefined the boundaries of agency, substance, and divine power. In the previous episode, we discussed that Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr defined the jism as aʿrāḍ, or the accidents, which means that the bodies are nothing but a set of accidents shared universally by all corporeal entities. From multiple angles, we could see, like epistemologically, al-jism, or the body, is intelligible, universal body. Logically, it is genus body, and ontologically, it is the common substrate behind all the material things. And this coextensiveness implies that the genus body is constituted entirely by coordinated aʿrāḍ, which mirrors the Paraphrase wave in Hegel. As Gregory of Nyssa noted, such a body exists only in thought and has no reality apart from the specific accidents that compose the actual bodies. The matter underlying jism is itself imperceptible, pure potential, and bearing no properties unless actualized. However, Aristotle emphasizes that no existent body can be without contrariety. It must be either heavy or light, hot or cold. In Ḍirār's words, as long as jism exists, it is inseparable from jins, or thiql, or the weight, which includes the khiffa, or the lightness, and thiql, or the heaviness. And similarly, it is inseparable from the jins, or the genus, under which fall harara, or the heat, and buruda, or the coldness likewise. Here, Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr adopts the terminology of Aristotelian school tradition, which distinguishes between the inseparable ard, or the ardun ghayr mufariq, or the separable ard, or the ard mufariq. For example, Porphyry explains that the Socrates is inseparable from place, but he is separable from any particular place. This is because Socrates is always somewhere, but once he leaves one place, he is in another. The distinction between inseparable aʿrāḍ, or the aʿrāḍ lazima, and mere aʿrāḍ, or the aʿrāḍ āriḍa, was originally introduced by Aristotle in his Analytica Posterior, where he contrasts the aʿrāḍ bidhatiha, or the per se aʿrāḍ, and the aʿrāḍ ardiyya, or the mere aʿrāḍ, are the properties by which bodies undergo passive states. So if you talk about the per se aʿrāḍ, these are necessarily concomitant with their subject arising from the essence of a thing in itself. They are predicated of a subject who are being that subject. They are not definitional properties. And if you talk about the mere aʿrāḍ, so these serve to individualize or specialize the substrate, but they are subject to change. When a quality changes to its opposite, or something in between, the substrate persists. For Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr, qudra, or the active power, and the alam, or the passive suffering, as well as ilm, or the knowledge, and jahl, or the ignorance, are not essential to all bodies, but only to particular kind of bodies. Like, for example, qudra, or the power, and the alam, or the suffering, it pertains only to animals. Ilm, or the knowledge, and jahl, or the ignorance, it pertains only to humans. So these are separable from the jism, or the body to a body, but insofar they belong to some particular kind of bodies, they can be replaced by their contraries. This process leads to the qualitative alteration, or the taghayyur kayfi, of those specific bodies from one hal, or from one state to another. A similar idea appears in Gregory of Nyssa, who, like Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr, refers to the jins, or the genus, of contrary properties. A thing is not a body if it lacks color, or the shape, the resistance, or the extension, the weight, and the other properties. Each of these aʿrāḍ, or the accident, is not itself a jism, but when it taken place separately, there is still found to be something else. So for both Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr and Gregory of Nyssa, a jism, or the body, cannot exist without certain inseparable aʿrāḍ, or the aʿrāḍ lazima, even though these aʿrāḍ are not themselves the essence of the jism. Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr argues that the aʿrāḍ, or the accidents of body, cannot exist separately and later combine into jism. In his view, they emerge at a moment of their initial coming to be through combination. In themselves, these attributes such as light, heavy, dense, color, etc. exist merely as thought and bare concepts. They have no independent experimental reality, and they are joined to form matter. Ḍirār maintains that while all aʿrāḍ, or the accidents, can combine to form a determined jism, or the body, it is absurd for them to exist in separation. If they did, for example, the lone, or the color, would exist without what is colored, and the life without what is alive. In his word, the separation of the body's part is tantamount to their passing away, or the fana. Although separation might be possible between the distinct bodies, the part of one body are inseparable while that body exists. Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr explains that a body may undergo qualitative changes if a part of it is replaced by its contrary. In other words, if one or the other accident passes away and it simultaneously replaced by its opposite, the body continues to exist. However, if the last part is not replaced by its contrary, the body ceases along with that part. Ḍirār argues that a body retains in its identity as long as its majority of aʿrāḍ persists. If half of more of its aʿrāḍ pass away, the characteristic sign of that body also ceases, and which leads to its substantial transformation. So the judgment or the hukm on what kind of body it is depends on the persistence of its dominant attributes. He further maintains that a body can undergo accidental change while remaining in motion or at rest. For him, aʿrāḍ, the accident, are not independently corporeal, so they cannot undergo movement or rest. Only jism, the body, which is a combination of aʿrāḍ or the aʿrāḍ mujtama'a, can move. And this aligns with the Platonic and peripatetic tradition, which sets Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr apart from Jahm ibn Ṣafwān, who led a different view on corporeality. Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr rejected the idea of prime matter or any underlying substance of the Jawhar beyond observable attributes. He argued that man is simply a combination of the multiple qualities such as color, taste, smell, and active potency at the quwa, and that these combined attributes themselves constitute a person. There is no separate essence or the substance that exists independently of them. So this way contrasts with the Aristotelian and Neoplatonic metaphysics, which claim that qualities must inhere in a material substrate. And according to Aristotle and Plotinus, sensible substances are formed by the union of qualities and matter. However, Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr, like Gregory of Nyssa, believed that the qualities in themselves exist as bare concept or mental construct, and their combination alone gives rise to material the material reality. Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr's rejection of underlying essence or form aligns with his broader critique of the Aristotle's theory of substance and accident, and which he addressed in his last treatise, aʿrāḍ عَلَى Aristotelis fil Jawahir wal aʿrāḍ, or the refutation of Aristotle on substances and accident. Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr's doctrine of human action places him between the Muʿtazila and Jahm ibn Ṣafwān. He argued that human action had two agents, either God, who creates the action, and man, who acquires and performs the action. So that both God and man are real agent, are the fa'il, in their respective capacities. And this position differs from the Mu'tazila, who held that the human alone create their own action, and from Jahm ibn Ṣafwān, who denied any human agency altogether, and he attributed all action directly to God's will. A key part of Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr's argument is his view on istita'r, the capacity to act. He maintained that this capacity exists both before and during an action and is inseparable attribute of man. And this opposes Jahm ibn Ṣafwān's claim that the capacity only exists at the moment of action itself. And further, Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr denied the existence of passive potentiality in material things, a fundamental concept in Aristotelian natural philosophy. And according to Aristotle, objects possess intrinsic passive capacities that allow them to undergo changes. Further, Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr denied the existence of passive potentiality in material things, a fundamental concept in Aristotelian natural philosophy. And according to Aristotle, objects possess intrinsic passive capacities that allow them to undergo changes. For example, it has the potential to become ash. However, Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr, like Jahm ibn Ṣafwān, rejected this view and argued the substantial changes happens when God replaces most of a body's accidents, causing it to cease to exist and transform into something else. And the qualitative change occurs when God replaces an accident with its opposite. For example, cold turning into heat. In this sense, Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr's position is a compromise. He agrees with the Mu'tazila that the human are true agent in their action, but he aligns with Jahm ibn Ṣafwān in denying intrinsic causal power in material objects. His doctrine resembles al-Maturidi's later stance, which also attempted to balance divine determinism and human responsibility rather than more deterministic framework of al-Ash'ari. And in sum, we could say that Ḍirār ibn ʿAmr, like Jahm ibn Ṣafwān, rejected the Aristotelian distinction between essence and accident, instead dividing the reality into two categories, like, for example, material, mutable, and passive, the created beings, and immaterial, immutable, and active God. Therefore, we've denied the atomic material elements, inherent natural faculties, and its total concepts of the prime matter and form. Instead of natural causes, they attributed all creation, change, and motion to God's direct, intentional power, seeing the natural world as a sequence of the contingent events willed by God. Jahm ibn Ṣafwān's rejection of the divine attributes aimed to preserve the God's absolute complicity, opposing any form of composition that implied change or generation. Ḍirār and Jahm ibn Ṣafwān's ideas contrasted with the Muʿtazila, particularly Jahm, who upheld the theory of the natures inherent in things. He criticized them for denying the hidden properties or the commune of the natural substances, which he saw as essential for explaining the physical change. So in sum, Ḍirār ibn Amr's metaphysical vision marks a critical intervention in early Islamic thought, which rejected Aristotelian substance-accident distinction, denying intrinsic causal power in matter, and reconfiguring the nature of the corporeality and agency through a theocentric lens. His ideas foreshadow key tensions in later theological debates over divine action, human responsibility, and the ontological status of the created entities. In our next segment, we begin a new phase of our series with an in-depth exploration of Ibn Taymiyyah's monumental work, Bayan al-Talbis al-Jahmiyya. Across its multiple volumes, Ibn Taymiyyah engages with the Jahmi legacy and offers a strong critique of the Kalam theology. So join us as we unpack this rich and complex text, volume by volume, tracing how it responds to and reconfigures the legacy of thinkers like Jahm ibn Ṣafwān, Ḍirār ibn Āmr, and beyond.